Oh, hi guys. Apologies right up front that I've taken me a while to finish this trilogy of terror, this story of my alcoholism and drug addiction. But I've put my back out last Thursday, today's Monday, and I've spent the weekend in absolute agony. I can't bend down. I'm getting better now. Found some anti-inflammatories in my bedside table from an old injury, so they really have proved the difference. Anyway, I'm able to sit here, which was something I couldn't have done yesterday. So got a lot of views for the first episode of this, The Descent into Madness. I think some people were expecting scenes of me thrown in the back of a van and carried away in a white straitjacket and locked up in a padded cell, but my insanity and madness was, for example, I remember an all-night movie marathon we went to. It might have been Planet of the Apes or something. We went to an old cinema called the Valhalla in Melbourne. A group of friends. We were snorting speed and smoking bongs during movies, and in the morning, it went all night. It finished about 7 in the morning, this marathon. We went down to the Yarra River, we had a barbecue, cracked open the beers then. We went on to a party in the afternoon. It was a hot 40-degree day in Melbourne, and I drank solidly all day, and that night I wasn't even in my car. I was in my sister's station wagon. I drove people home from the party, and one of those people I drove home was a mother and her child. So I've never forgotten that behaviour on my part. That I consider that insane, because I smashed the car actually after I dropped everybody off. I passed out as I got back home and hit a fire hydrant. So it's hard to live with those memories, but I can't change them. But yeah, there were a couple of things that brought me to my knees, and I think the living with the Wiccan witch, the lady showed me that the person I thought I was far removed from the truth. I was a bully. I was violent, unpredictable, scary, and a danger to her and myself and to everyone around me. Then there was the Pran Club, which I mentioned. They actually made me a bar person at one stage. They let me get behind the bar and pour beers, which meant I drank one for every one I served, and I was just crawling out of that place 5 nights a week. It ruined my relationship, but it also shone a light on my descent. There were 2 other occasions that come to mind. There was the one with there was an all-nighter, sort of a weekend at the Crazy Horse Cinema in Melbourne, adult cinema 24/7, the Crazy Horse, which is kind of ironic because I love Crazy Horse, the Indian chief. And but yeah, I was there for a whole long weekend, popping ecstasy, drinking beer in a backpack, slipping out for drugs, and by the end of that long weekend, having spent 3 days and nights awake in an adult cinema, I had a breakdown at work, and that's when I had an anxiety attack. That was the end of my IT career. That signalled the end of it. They demoted me, took away my position, and I launched into a campaign against my employer with the unions involved. It was just horrible. I should have admitted it was all my fault, but anyway, and then the other thing was there was an Easter, so I had started going to AA when I got back from Thailand. I mentioned that Thai trip, I think, but anyway, if I didn't, I went to Thailand in the year 2000. I was advised not to go because I was starting to try to get sober, and I didn't listen to the good advice. I went to Thailand. My friend left after a day or 2 because of my erratic behaviour and my anger, and I was left alone there. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. I lasted 5 days. I couldn't eat. I drank around the clock, and I smashed up the room, woke up with ants all over my face, and had to fly home with a nappy on an adult incontinence pad. And so when I got home, I knew I had to do something. The woman gave me the ultimatum: it's the booze or living here. You can't do both. And so I tried going to AA for a while. And then she was going away for Easter, so I started concocting this fantasy in my head about going up to my mate's farm and spending the weekend at the farm and taking red wine and a box of beer, taking the dog with me and having campfires and sleeping by the tent. He had a fantastic farm. He wasn't going to be there next to a little creek. And I was sitting in AA meetings and calculating how much booze I would need to take with me, and it turned out to be an absolute disaster. And I got up there, I was drinking all the way, and I lost the car keys within an hour of being there. I had to walk back to the main road, hitchhike to get back to town, then get a taxi from the country back to where I was living, hundreds of dollars. This is back in the early 2000s, or the late 90s, early 2000s I think, but it was a disaster. And that told me again that I couldn't drink with safety. Just hold on, I've got to take the chips off. Yeah, just making some chips for later on. Yeah, it was events like that that started to drive home to me that I just was having nightmare experiences with alcohol. I was drinking every day by this stage. As I said in the last one, morning drinking, vomiting blood sometimes, alcoholic diarrhea. And these disasters, these calamities really shook me to the core and started to draw in question my idea of my life. And could I carry on like that? So anyway, I left that witchy woman. Really didn't want to. I loved living with her, and especially the dog, Broccoli. But I knew it was miserable for her having me around, and so I moved in with this young Argentine guy that I knew from. I actually knew his mother, was dating his mother years before. And he smoked a lot of weed. He had friends over all the time. They used to play PlayStation. They used to take over the lounge, lay on couches, eat junk food and play PlayStation real loud all hours of the night. So they weren't exactly balanced characters. I was in a tiny little room. I put up with it. But I wasn't exactly a great housemate either, and I had discovered ecstasy. I was staying up all night, having people come over, going into work with makeup on, and I thought ecstasy was the solution to my problem. I thought, well, if I take eckies, I don't need to drink. But that was no solution at all. Getting the stuff, sourcing the pills, paying for them, it was impossible. And then there were drawbacks, of course, with substituting substances. Eventually went back to live in Paran, that little that rundown house where I'd lived with the poets and the artists and the young guys in leather. They'd moved on, but one of them had stayed in the house, a guy called Snake, and he asked me to move in with him. So I left the Argentine guy. I went and shared this big house with Snake, separate kitchens, separate lounges, run down right in the heart of all the action, and stayed for a while, about 6 months. That's when I was going to Cuba most nights of the week, clubbing. So he had said, you can move in, but you can't drink. And because of the ecstasy and the eckies, I was able to do that. I was able to comply by that, and I didn't really miss drinking, but my arrogance, my anger, I couldn't manage my life. I didn't pay bills, I didn't pay parking fines, I didn't vote, I was getting away with driving because at that stage they didn't have drug testing. But nothing else had changed except I wasn't drinking. And my behaviour, having guys over, selling drugs from the house, growing weed. He asked me to leave, and I went to live with a friend of mine, my mate Steve, my best mate. I went to live with him. I didn't do right by him. I ended up owing him rent. You know, he had a little 2-bedroom flat. He had to clean out that one room for me to move in. And I had boxes of shit piled up in the wall and stuff under the bed. I could hardly move in there. And, you know, it didn't really work out with Steve. It tested our friendship and never really recovered, really. But I will do an episode on Steve at some stage. Anyway, yeah, from there I went to live in a place called Springvale. So I had, with the advent of the internet, I discovered transgender chat rooms where there were other transgendered people chatting away and talking about hormones and lifestyles and changing names and things like that. And I related to that and to them, and I got heavily involved. That was always, in those days, it was a bone of contention. Anywhere I lived, you needed a dedicated phone line to get on the internet, and phone calls were being missed because I was always hogging up the phone line. So anyway, yeah, I got a call from a friend of mine, Sarah, and she said that they were moving in down to Springvale and they were going to get a house, and did I want to share a house with them. So she was with these two other, I call them nuffs, from New Zealand. They had no money. Their pension hadn't come through from New Zealand. So we got this house in Springvale, and you know, we were doing it tough. It's cold in winter. They couldn't contribute any money, so Sarah and I were paying the rent and the gas bills and the phone and all that stuff. And I started getting jacked off with that and thinking that we needed to get some people in that could pay money. And these New Zealanders, they weren't very nice people anyway. That ended up, we had a big brawl all in. Fists were thrown. I regret that. But anyway, I had to get out quick. So I had been going up to Sydney a couple of times with the transgender community that I discovered on the internet. They used to have get-togethers at a place called the Taxi Club in Sydney. So I'd gone up a couple of times. I had a little Suzuki Vitara soft-top Jeep, and I could go up there, and I met quite a few of them, and one of them was a friend called, it doesn't really matter, but I stayed with her a couple of times, and she said she had a flat in Newtown. So she said, you know, why don't we get a place together, shares, and, you know, come and live up here in Sydney. So when I needed somewhere to go after that big fight at Springvale, I put some stuff in storage, and I packed up the Jeep. Like, I couldn't see the side mirror, I couldn't see my rear view mirror. I had so much stuff in the Jeep: guitars, amps, mattress, futon, yeah, all sorts of stuff. And I could only see out of my driver's side mirror. And of course I had the bong and the bag of weed to get me up to Sydney. So it was a hell of a journey up there. But I ended up moving in with this friend for a couple of days, but she didn't want to leave her flat. And so I lived in my car for a while, and then I found a room to rent. But anyway, while I was in Sydney, I didn't drink, but I lived amongst the heroin users, the street people. You know, someone asked me, what did you want to go to Sydney for? And I said, to experience the true grit, because that's what it was like. I lived in the back alleys of Newtown, above a shop, with heroin addicts and thieves and criminals and street people, you know, and that's what I was doing. I was busking, but I didn't drink. I was going to the Taxi Club most weekends, but yeah, so I then included in my repertoire crystal meth, started smoking crystal meth, lots of weed, pills, whatever we could get. My attitude didn't change because of, you know, still an angry, frustrated, unpredictable lunatic with no sense of responsibility, and my life was unmanageable still. But I felt arrogant. I felt above these other peasants that I lived with because they were junkies and I didn't consider myself a drug addict. Got into some trouble after 2 years in Sydney. My name was plastered around Newtown on walls with death threats painted on walls towards me. My stuff got stolen by a heavy-duty criminal from Boggo Road, Brisbane. Stole my guitar, my amp, and I was told I got off lucky that he didn't, cut my fingers off or do real damage to me, so I had to walk away from that. But anyway, Sarah and the others were coming back to Melbourne, so I jumped in a car with them, and we came back to Melbourne. And eventually we found this place in Noble Park to rent. Sarah, the Nuff-Nuffs and me. And this time I made sure that I was on the lease. So I became a bit of a tyrant. And yeah, it was a pretty basic house. Once again, we tried the heating, but it cost a fortune. All the pipes under the house were broken. It was ducted heating and was unaffordable, so it was a cold house. We relied on hot water bottles, and in summer it was sweltering. It was just a red brick house. I'll show you some footage when I went back to have a look at it a couple of weeks ago. Stop and stretch my legs and reminisce here. Jackson's Road. This corner. Already I'm seeing a huge change. I think this fence is where our house was, which was a hedge. Oh my God, the memories are flooding back. Actually, well, this is 24, we were at 26. So yeah, it is. They have replaced the hedge with a fence. The hedge was always trouble. But it was this shithole here. That was my room, the first one there you're seeing there. It looks pretty much the same. No heating. Hot as all fuck. In summer. It looks pretty messy. Kids' clothes and toys thrown all over the ground. Alright. No, it's the same house. I wondered if they might have knocked it down and put units there. That's where the cats came from. I had a big dope plant growing down the side there. They went and pinched it, the bastards. These are olive trees. I was picking these olives. There's an olive there at one stage and pickling them. The neighbour had a pool and Sarah's little dog disappeared one night. Just pure coincidence. Sarah went and checked the pool next door and found her little dog in there, saved its life. But it was considered, I felt it at the time, it was a bit of a bolt hole. It was a safe place for me and to re-establish myself. And there were some happy memories there. They moved out, the two New Zealanders went, and another friend came in, Sophie. Really got on well with her. And there was the three of us for a while. We were transgendered and we were supporting each other. We had lots of parties where we had cross-dressers, and there's an organisation called the Seahorse for people that are exploring their gender. We used to have parties and the seahorses would come over. I stuck to drinking coffee and all that kind of thing. But then eventually, because I'm an alcoholic, my alcoholism was waiting for a reason to pick up again, to have a drama. And I'd never treated the reasons why I drank. I'd never looked into the grief of losing mum or the resentments I had towards my sister, and all sorts of nonsense. But it wasn't just towards people. I had resentments against organisations, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the church, the Liberal Party, authority. I could go on. It seems stupid now, and they have us saying something about me drinking the poison in order to hurt the other person. It was something like that. I did get some work in the aged care sector, and one of those people I got close to in the aged care job passed away. Then there was a breakup that came along, and I had this wine in the cupboard that I used to use for cooking, and the alcohol was just patient. It waited for me, and I convinced myself that I was down in the dumps and I couldn't stop crying and all that sort of stuff. So I got to the pantry and I took out the cooking wine in a coffee cup, and I took that drink, and straight away I felt the effect of the alcohol. My cheeks blushed. I felt heat in my face. The room started to get a bit spinny, and I realised how strong alcohol is. And that launched me back into drinking again. And, you know, it wasn't like going back to where I left off. It was picking up, and my body had aged somewhat by this stage. I was now about, I'm going to say 45, 46. And yeah, it didn't take long before I was drinking every day again, and morning drinking and all that sort of thing, and taking risks, drink driving. And my behaviour to my housemates spiralled out of control. I became paranoid, unpredictable, violent sometimes. I kicked people out on a premise of them making noise. I kicked one woman's door down, threw her out on the spot. I was a tyrant, you know. And sometimes I'd get 6 months off. There'd be another calamity or another episode come along where I was sick as a dog. I remember trying to stab myself one night. I had a breakdown, drank 2 bottles of red wine, vomited it on my doona, cost me hundreds of dollars to get my bedding cleaned, and tried to stab myself with a knife, taken to Dandenong Hospital. And then I'd wake up remorseful and I'd try and do something again. But I resisted going back to AA. People said, why don't you go to AA? And I was reluctant because of the meetings, or that was the excuse I gave. So anyway, yeah, I'd get 6 months or a month off here and there, and then someone would offer me a drink and I'd take it because I had no defence against that first drink. And so then after some other calamity, I don't remember what it was, but I ended up going to this, I think it was called SIDS, SEADS, Southeastern Alcohol Drug Services. So I went and saw them and told them my situation, and they also said, well, you thought about AA? And I said, I used to go there. It's all meetings. I don't want to go to meetings. And so they had a home detox program. So what happened was they sent a nurse out every morning to breathalyze you, and if you if you hadn't been drinking, then the nurse would sit down and they'd prescribe you some diazepam. So the first morning she came, I was sober, she spoke to me, she gave me the script for diazepam, and I think I got half a dozen or maybe 4 the first day, and they wean you off them after a week. You're off the diazepam. But that first day, it was fantastic. I thought, this is the answer. This is the solution that I've been looking for. I felt fantastic, and so I was so excited and energized the next day when she came over. I remember saying to her, if I'd have known about these things at 16, I would never have started drinking. These things are fabulous. And she said something like, I wouldn't get too enthusiastic about them, because we're going to cut your script today, and by the end of the week you'll be off them. Well, that was a bit of a downer. But yeah, so by the end of the week I decided I needed my own script for diazepam. And somehow on the internet I found an Egyptian, a young guy that worked at a chemist, and he said that he could come over with anything I wanted. And he arrived with a puffer jacket, and he had diazepam, Serapax, tramadol, all sorts of things along those lines. And I shelled out hundreds of dollars to this guy. He was as dodgy as anything. And I thought, yeah, well, that's it. I've got my solution now. I did a favour for a friend. She sent me down this pack of dope, real strong dope from Queensland. It was vacuum sealed. And I remember laying on the back steps of the house. Sun was coming in, smoking this really strong weed with the Valium coursing through me and saying, this is fantastic. I'm at the peak I want to be. Stoned immaculate.
Let me tell you about heartache and the loss of God, wandering in hopeless night. Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned immaculate.
And of course that's not viable. You can't keep that going. Then my behaviour started to rocket. I was staying up all night drinking gallons of black coffee, watching Breaking Bad, and becoming a paranoid, erratic lunatic, you know. And my housemates were suffering. But yeah, it wasn't, I couldn't keep it going. And then always at the end of it all was that I still didn't have my drug of choice, which was alcohol. So I broke, or someone gave me some alcohol, I'm not sure what it was. I think I was busking. It was a New Year's Eve. I was going out that night, and it was a hot day, and someone dropped a half pack of cider in ice next to my guitar case as I was busking. I drank that, and I went out that night to a ball in the city, Saints and Sinners ball, and I just drank from the time I got there. And then I drove home from the city on New Year's Eve. And so then, you know, I had a world of trouble. I had alcohol and those prescription drugs in my life, and I was full of fear and anxiety. I knew that my life was a house of cards, and it was only going to take one disaster to bring me to my knees and maybe put me in jail, you know. I had these cats that I adopted that were living under the house, feral cats. I loved them like my own kids. I was worried that my behaviour was going to imperil my cats, that they'd be taken off me and euthanised. And they were fair. They were fair fears, you know. But anyway, what happened, what broke me was my guy got this place where I'm living now, and I started visiting him, and for a while that I used to come up and see him, I'd pick up some wine and some beer on the way, and we'd sit on the porch, drink, have cheese, listen to music like normal people, and watch the sun go down. It was really pleasant, but I was always wanting to drink more wine. As soon as he got up to do something, I'd be sculling a glass. The glasses were too small for my liking. I wanted a big bowl, you know, a fish bowl of wine. And the inevitable happened. I was due to come up here to see him on a Tuesday, I think it was. It was a long weekend, and I started drinking on the Friday, and I drank around the clock for 4 days. It was really hot. It was summer. It was 40 degrees. I couldn't eat. I passed out. I woke up. I drank cask wine out of a coffee cup. And then I got in the car and I drove up here. It was a horrible, horrible drive. Sometimes I was driving like that. Peak hour traffic in my Suzuki with the roof off. I was so drunk, but I still stopped and got some booze in at the town nearest here. With travellers, we call them. A couple of cans of beer as a traveller. And I woke up the next day. I was so sick, I was vomiting this bile my guy went to work and he said, just take it easy, stay home, have some soup, just take it easy. And as soon as he left, I thought there's wine in the cupboard. I could go and have a glass of wine. Oh, my back. Oh yeah, sorry. So I knew the choice was clear. I knew I could have a glass of wine and I'd feel better. Or I could do something about this problem I had. So the thing was, I knew that I'd got away with it. I'd driven all the way from Dandenong up to here, and I hadn't killed anyone, I hadn't crashed a car, I hadn't been caught by the police. So there was no reason I wouldn't do it again, and if I did it once, I would do it again, and inevitably there'd be some horrific consequence to my thinking. So I rang AA, and they said, why don't you come tonight to Springvale to a meeting? And that's what I did. So I waited till I was feeling a bit better, and I drove down to a meeting in Springvale for that first time. I'm talking about just over 11 years ago. I've been clean and sober 11 years now. But when I got to that meeting, I sat in the car park and my head started saying, I think you're overreacting, you're being a drama queen, why don't you just go home, go to bed, whatever. But the guy that ran the meeting, the secretary, he saw me and he came and tapped on my window and said, hi, welcome, do you want to come and help me set up the chairs, or something like that. And when I got in, I was full of fear, and there was a guy called Daniel, and he just welcomed me and said, have you got a problem with drinking, and this is the right place, and the word hope was there. I listened to their stories, and then at the end of it, they gave me a meetings book, and I thought, well, I've got nothing to do, I've got a car, and I slept well that night for the first time, and I woke up the next day and I felt hope in my heart. I looked in my meetings book, and there was another meeting the next day on a Wednesday at lunchtime, and I went over to there. It might have been Chelsea or somewhere up the peninsula. I think they had a barbecue lunch on or something, and then after the lunch they had the meeting, and the people were very kind, they were respectful, they were welcoming, and it didn't matter how I looked or what my gender was or anything like that. It was just that I was an alcoholic. My life had become unmanageable. I came to learn that after one drink, I have an allergy. That means I can't stop drinking. The drink kicks off the allergy, and I have this craving that's incredible. Unless you're an alcoholic, you can't comprehend the craving. I didn't have a word for it, this phenomena of craving, but I knew that when I was drinking at Noble Park, the bottle shop was sort of it was a 10-minute walk or a 2-minute drive just up the road, and I'd be thinking I don't need any more alcohol, but I'd be looking at the clock thinking I've only got 15 minutes till the bottle shop closes. I knew I shouldn't be driving, but I couldn't stop looking at the clock, car keys, TV, clock, car keys, TV, and then the next thing I know I'd be in the car driving down, racing to the bottle shop. So that was the craving. They explained to me that the disease of alcoholism is a three-pronged attack. It's the physical cravings for the alcohol, but then there's a mental obsession. They describe this, and there's also a spiritual nature to it. The hole in the soul. So they describe this wheel where we start the binge, and it doesn't matter if you drink once a week or once a month. It's what happens when you start drinking. Do you experience that phenomena of craving? Do you find it hard to stop after one? But you go through that known stage of a binge, and then I'd wake up in the morning full of guilt, shame, and remorse. And sometimes it was that bad that I'd stay off for a couple of days because I'd be so physically sick that I might stay off it for a couple of days. But then the mental obsession would start, and I would fall for the same trick or the same lie again and again and again, which was 1 or 2 drinks can't hurt. This time I won't repeat my mistakes of last time. I'll just have a couple, And that lie existed within me for decades. So so by the third day or so I went to another meeting, and I was learning all the time. I was sitting up the front listening to the old speakers. No longer was I full of knowledge. I came in now aware that I had no knowledge. So when they spoke to me, I didn't answer with, yeah, I know. I answered with, okay, I'm ready to hear. I'm ready for you to teach me. And someone mentioned 90 meetings in 90 days. And I rang my partner at the time, and he said, take as long as you need. So because I had my meetings book, I just stayed, and I had my little dog with me. And me and Millie used to go to the meetings in Melbourne, around the peninsula, Berwick, Pakenham. My home group became Dandenong. Dandenong had 4 meetings a weekend, at the Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, spiritual concepts. I came to learn that I needed a higher power of my own understanding. I'd been a Catholic. I suppose I still am. I don't think you can get out of it. A Catholic, but I didn't really go for that. But I had a lot of spiritual iconography in my life, on my arms, my body, around my room. I had carvings, and I had all sorts of things. There was one crazy period where I used to put tandoori powder. I used to lick my thumb, put it in the tandoori powder, and put it down my forehead like a Hindu stripe, and go to nightclubs. I mean, I was flying high on eckies. But there was this thing of protecting myself from evil. So I had some spirituality in me, perhaps not religion, but spirituality. So I came to terms with that there was something, I believe, had been looking over me all my life, maybe the spirit of my mum. And I called on that spirit to help me again. And my life revolved around, for the next few months, just going to meetings until I found myself a home group, and I was given a role as a literature officer, and then a treasurer, and then a secretary. And I moved up here to the country, but I still used to go down every Saturday to my home group, which was an hour and a half one way, to my home group to open up, to mop the floor after the meetings, and to be there for people that were struggling with alcoholism. We used to see a lot of the street people outside our meeting, the guys that lived in the parks and gardens. They knew some of the guys at our meeting. These were men that were drinking methylated spirits with rope around their pants, living in parks and gardens. I came to understand that for them, their lifestyle was normal. The abnormal had become normal, living in a garden, because they didn't pay rent, they didn't have to go to work. They just waited for their pensions or dole payments to buy casks of wine and methylated spirits in between payments. So that's basically what I did, and I still do it today. I still do between maybe 2 or 3 meetings a week, at least. My home group every Monday I go to. Even with this bad back, I'm going tonight to my home group because I've got the keys. I've got to open up. I've sponsored, and I'm still sponsored by a great sponsor I've had for most of my journey. And my life today is unrecognisable from those times back then. I like myself. I respect myself. The 12-step program has removed the resentments I had for irrational reasons. I've come to thank my sister for saving my life and giving me a home. I don't feel that resentment anymore. And some of those organisations I'm still working on, but it doesn't keep me awake at night anymore. I don't fly off the handle. I'm still a sensitive person, and you can hurt my feelings quite easily. But I go and sit in the corner and rationalise about why my feelings are hurt and what did the person mean, and what is my response going to be, that sort of thing. Life is a lot easier when you're a recovering alcoholic. It's a lot easier than active addiction, that's for sure. There were promises made to me in AA and they've all come true. I get peace, I get serenity. I didn't know for all those decades, that's what I actually was looking for, was peace and serenity. It wasn't rollerblades, it was peace and serenity, and I get that most of the time. I've got a good loving relationship with my husband. I respect him, I love him, and we care for each other. So that's kind of my story. AA, I suppose, isn't for everyone, but I don't know of another way, because I don't think many of us go in really wanting to stop drinking. We want the shit to stop, but I think we want to drink as well. But my understanding, for me, alcoholics like me, I'm a real alcoholic, that I can never drink again in safety. And to think that I can never drink again is too much for me. I don't know what's around the corner. There could be something that is so cataclysmic and challenging that I think a drink might be a good idea. I don't know what's ahead of me, but for today, I get pretty sure that I can get through today without drinking. That's all I need to do. So I hope this has been of help to some of you. Yeah, for me, and it's giving back as well. I like to give back to other alcoholics that are beginning their journeys, because it helps keep me sober. But anyway, that's my message, that's my recovery. It was a hellish living, it was insane, and it was mad enough for me. How bad was it? It was bad enough for me to do something about it. So I hope that gives some of you encouragement. If you've got any questions, just drop them down below, and I wish you a happy recovery. Over and out, bye bye.